U.S. Senator from the state of Connecticut, Chris Murphy. Senator Murphy, thanks for joining us this Sunday.
Thanks a lot for having me. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter to you as well. First of all, I want to ask you in terms of, people are reading these stories that some states are doing different things than Connecticut is doing. Should there be a federal policy in terms of social distancing and businesses being shut down?
I think there should. I mean, this virus doesn't recognize borders. At the very least, the president should be using some incentive system to prompt states who aren't enacting any real social distancing measures or closing any schools or businesses to do so, because Connecticut is vulnerable so long as other parts of the country aren't practicing the kind of recommendations made by public health professionals. So I'd like to see the president mount some federal response. Thus far, my argument is that he hasn't mounted any serious effort to combat coronavirus. He's left it all to the states. He's left it all to governors like Lamont and Cuomo and Murphy, and that's got to end.
Senator, I want to ask you, you held a telephone town hall recently with small business owners. What did they tell you? What is their major concern?
They have told me that they're worried about this new federal program that is sending money down to small businesses. And so we're seeking to try to get some reforms to make sure that banks aren't playing favorites, aren't just sending money to their biggest clients. I was very worried that structuring this small business grant program around the banks would end up with smaller businesses not being able to get into the queue, or at least get the money before it expired. And so that's one of the worries we're hearing right now from small businesses. And I want to authorize more money to make sure that every single small business who wants one of these grants that are up to $10 million gets one. But I want to make sure that it's not up to the banks as to who gets the loan and who gets the grant and who doesn't get the grant.
What would you say to the person who owns a small clothing shop who wants to open and then says, well, why does a gun shop get to open yet I'm not considered essential?
Listen, I think it's obviously up to the governor as to what businesses are essential and what aren't. I think that the governor has made some tough decisions there. But what that owner should know is that there is a federal program that will allow that owner to be able to pay his or her employees, to pay their rent up through, at the very least, June 30th, and be able to stay solvent and reopen when the state orders are rescinded. So I think we've put businesses in a position where they can survive. It's going to be expensive. There's no doubt about it, but I think it's a worthwhile expenditure.
You introduced the Medical Supply Chain Emergency Act, which would require the federal government to take over the medical supply chain. Walk us through exactly what that means.
So right now, every state and every hospital are competing against each other for masks, for gowns, for tests and ventilators. It's driving up the price. And it's also really not assuring that the equipment is ending up in the places of highest need. This is a national emergency. And so what I have introduced legislation to do is to command the president to force manufacturers to make more of the equipment that we need, and then federalize the supply chain temporarily so that we make sure that the areas of highest need, like the Northeast, get our fair share of that equipment. Right now, that's not happening. Manufacturers aren't willing to make this equipment without a guarantee that it's going to be bought by someone, and the distribution system is just broken. Our hospitals are spending half their time just searching for protective gear instead of fighting the virus. And we need to let the federal government do what it does best, which is help manage the supply chain, get supplies down to the states and hospitals, and let hospitals do what they do best, which is attack this virus with the ferocity necessary to turn the corner.
You were critical of the president a while back. Is he getting any better in terms of his performance, in terms of managing this crisis?
No, he's not. My feeling is the president is pretty disconnected from the management of this crisis at this point. I was on the phone with the vice president and Dr. Fauci and others yesterday, and they don't talk a lot about the president when you're on the phone with them, but they unfortunately take direction from him. He's not managing the crisis, but they can't do anything without his authorization, and he has not given them the authorization to federalize the manufacture of PPE. He has not given them the direction to make sure the equipment gets to the right places. He's not given them the direction to issue national stay-at-home guidance. So I think the president is spending most of his time watching TV, not a lot of time managing this crisis on an hourly basis. But the orders that he's giving right now are just not sufficient.
What do you think we should do with the election in November? Senator Elizabeth Warren has talked about perhaps a write-in election. Do you support that?
Well, I'd like to see us make it as easy as possible for states to adopt vote-by-mail systems. In Connecticut, that's difficult because we have a constitutional amendment, but we can use our absentee ballots as a effective vote-by-mail system in our state. But I think the federal government should take action to allow states to make mail-in voting as easy as possible. The president is attacking mail-in voting because, frankly, he knows it would allow more people to vote, and he thinks that would jeopardize his reelection chances. The data tells us that mail-in voting is actually the safest way to vote. The least amount of fraud as possible in mail-in systems.
Senator, when do you think we'll see the Senate and the House back in session, or at least meeting in person?
I frankly would like to see the House and Senate in session right now. I think we should take steps to be able to vote remotely and have debates remotely. That's right now being opposed by Senator McConnell and others, because I think we need to be able to pass legislation like my bill to federalize the supply chain and the manufacture of critical medical equipment. So I'd like to see us have a mechanism by which we can vote and debate remotely, because I just think this crisis doesn't take weeks off. And so Congress shouldn't be taking weeks off either.
Senator Chris Murphy, we appreciate you joining us, and stay safe and stay healthy out there.
Thanks a lot, Dennis. You too.
Hopefully we'll see you soon in person one of these days.
Right.
In a moment, we will take you to Italy. And later, what are your legal rights during the pandemic? We welcome you to watch past editions of Face the State right now on our app or on YouTube.